I'll never forget the moment that changed my life forever. It was a crisp November morning when I first met Sarah, though back then she was just another face in my overcrowded classroom at Lincoln High. As a 27-year-old substitute teacher, barely scraping by on $1,200 a month, I thought I'd seen it all, until that day. The bell had rung 10 minutes ago, but Sarah's seat remained conspicuously empty. Just as I was about to mark her absent, the door creaked open. There she stood, shivering violently in a threadbare sweater 2 sizes too big, her cheeks flushed from the biting wind outside. Her eyes darted around the room, avoiding everyone's gaze as she shuffled to her seat. That's when I noticed her shoes, or rather, the lack of them. She was wearing thin cotton socks, completely soaked through from walking 3 miles in the rain. My heart clenched painfully as I watched her try to hide her feet under the desk. The other kids had already started whispering, their cruel teenage eyes missing nothing. I could see the shame burning in Sarah's face as she pretended to focus on her textbook, her hands trembling as she turned the pages. Every fiber of my being screamed to do something, anything, to help this child who looked like she hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. The administration had been clear during my orientation. No personal involvement with students beyond academic matters. But as I looked at Sarah's gaunt face and the dark circles under her eyes, those rules felt like chains binding me to some cold, unfeeling machine. This wasn't just about a pair of shoes anymore. It was about a young girl fighting battles no child should have to face alone. I remember glancing at the clock, knowing I had exactly 45 minutes before lunch break. 45 minutes to figure out how to get Sarah dry socks and proper shoes without drawing more attention to her situation. My mind raced through possibilities as I continued teaching, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. Little did I know, this single act of compassion would set off a chain reaction that would shake our entire community to its core. By third period, I couldn't take it anymore. Watching Sarah try to concentrate while visibly shaking from cold was tearing me apart. During the bathroom break, I made my move. "Sarah," I whispered, pulling her aside near the supply closet. "Come with me." Her wide, frightened eyes told me everything I needed to know. She was used to people judging her, using her poverty against her. But I wasn't going to be one of them. I led her to the faculty lounge, ignoring the curious stares from other teachers. Emptying my wallet, all $43 of it, I handed her a 20 and a 10. "There's a shoe store 2 blocks down," I explained quickly. "Tell them Mrs. Thompson sent you. They'll let you pick out whatever you need." Her lower lip quivered as she tried to refuse, but I cut her off. "Take it, Sarah. You deserve to be warm and comfortable." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Students whispered about the teacher who gave away her lunch money, but I didn't care. What I hadn't anticipated was Principal Meyer waiting for me after final bell. His office smelled of stale coffee and disappointment as he slid a manila folder across his desk. Inside were photos, grainy security camera stills of me handing money to Sarah. "Mrs. Johnson," he said coldly, "you understand we can't have teachers giving students money? It creates complications." Before I could explain, he dropped the bombshell. "We've received complaints from parents about your unprofessional behavior. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending investigation." The words hit me like a freight train. My hands trembled as I gathered my belongings, each item feeling heavier than the last. 3 years of dedication, countless hours spent preparing lessons, mentoring struggling students, all dismissed in a 15-minute meeting. Walking out of Lincoln High for what might be the last time, I felt the weight of every judgmental stare from colleagues who once called me friend. Mrs. Peterson from the math department actually crossed the hallway to avoid me. The janitor, Mr. Harris, who always greeted me with a smile, looked away as I passed. My phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, messages from friends asking what happened, news alerts about the teacher-student scandal already making local headlines. But the worst part? Seeing Sarah standing by the flagpole, new shoes on her feet, tears streaming down her face as she watched me leave. In that moment, I questioned everything. Was helping her worth losing my career over? Could I have done things differently? The doubt swirled in my mind as I drove home, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the empty streets. I kept replaying Principal Meyer's words. "You should have followed protocol." Protocol. as if human compassion could be reduced to a set of bureaucratic guidelines. That night, sleep eluded me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's face, the mixture of gratitude and shame that had broken my heart. I scrolled through job listings until dawn, each rejection email piling up in my inbox like confirmation that I'd made a terrible mistake. By morning, I was ready to pack it all and teaching Lincoln City, maybe even hope itself. Then the helicopters came. It was precisely 8:17 a.m. when the first helicopter appeared, its rotors slicing through the crisp autumn air with an urgency that sent chills down my spine. I was sitting on my apartment balcony, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold, when the deafening roar shattered the morning quiet. My heart leapt into my throat as I watched the sleek black chopper hover above Lincoln High, its shadow falling across the familiar brick facade like some ominous premonition. Then came another, and another. Within minutes, 5 military-grade helicopters formed a perfect circle above the school grounds, their synchronized movements precise and deliberate. The ground shook beneath my feet as they descended, kicking up clouds of dust that sent students and teachers scattering like startled birds. Through my binoculars, I watched Principal Meyer emerge from the building, his usually immaculate suit now covered in dirt, his face pale with shock. What happened next defied all logic. A group of men in dark suits poured out of the lead helicopter, moving with military precision toward the administration building. Their leader, a tall, imposing figure with silver hair and eyes that seemed to pierce through walls, barked orders that carried across the distance. Secure the perimeter. Give me the principal now. The scene unfolding below me felt like something out of a spy thriller, not my sleepy little town of Lincoln City. My phone exploded with notifications. Local news stations were going crazy, their live feeds showing aerial shots of the school surrounded by armed personnel. Social media lit up with theories ranging from terrorist threats to alien invasions. But it was the text message from Sarah that made my blood run cold. They're here for me. I'm so sorry. As I watched from my balcony, the truth began to crystallize in my mind. Sarah wasn't just a poor student struggling to make ends meet. The way those agents moved, the military precision of their operation, this was something far bigger than anyone at Lincoln High could have imagined. My legs felt like jelly as I grabbed my jacket, knowing I had to get to the school, consequences be damned. The woman who had fired me yesterday was now standing in the middle of what looked like a national security incident, her face contorted with confusion and fear. The helicopter's blades continued their relentless assault on the morning air as I ran toward the chaos, my mind racing with questions. What had I stumbled into? Why were federal agents descending on our small-town high school like it was ground zero for some international crisis? And most importantly, why did they seem to be looking for Sarah? The scene at Lincoln High was pure pandemonium. Parents were rushing the gates, screaming for their children while armed agents maintained a tight perimeter. I pushed through the crowd, flashing my former teacher ID at every checkpoint until I reached the inner circle. That's when I saw him, Agent Director Markham, the same silver-haired man from earlier, now standing beside Sarah. His expression wasn't one of anger or accusation, but of profound relief mixed with something darker, regret. Mrs. Johnson. He acknowledged me with a nod, his voice carrying authority that silenced the surrounding chaos. We need to talk. He gestured toward the principal's office, now converted into an impromptu command center. Papers were strewn everywhere, computers humming with encrypted communications. On the wall, a massive screen displayed surveillance footage from locations I didn't recognize. Airports, government buildings, corporate offices, all featuring the same face, Sarah's. You see, Agent Markham began, pouring himself a glass of water with steady hands. Sarah isn't just a student. She's the daughter of Elena Vasquez, one of the world's foremost cybersecurity experts. Last month, Elena uncovered evidence of a massive conspiracy involving several Fortune 500 companies and government officials. Before she could release the information, she disappeared. We've been searching for her ever since. Sarah sat quietly in the corner, her new shoes tapping nervously against the floor. Mom knew they'd come for us, she whispered, finally meeting my eyes. That's why she sent me here, to Lincoln City. She thought I'd be safe in a place where no one would look. Her voice cracked on the last word, and I instinctively moved closer to her. Agent Markham continued, his tone grave. The people behind this conspiracy have been monitoring every known associate of Elena Vasquez. When they saw your transaction with Sarah, they flagged it as suspicious activity. Your act of kindness inadvertently exposed her location. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in, and nearly got you both killed. Suddenly, the pieces clicked into place. The security cameras, the photos in Principal Meyer's office, they weren't from the school system. Someone else had been watching us. My stomach churned as I realized how close we'd come to disaster. Why didn't you tell me? I asked Sarah, my voice trembling with equal parts fear and frustration. I wanted to, she admitted, tears streaming down her face. But Mom taught me never to trust anyone, not even nice teachers who buy you shoes. Her attempt at humor fell flat in the tense atmosphere. The sound of approaching footsteps interrupted our conversation. 2 agents entered, escorting a handcuffed man whose face made my blood run cold. Principal Meyer. He's been leaking information to them for months, Agent Markham explained, using his position to identify potential targets. Your suspension probably saved your life. Rage boiled within me as I stared at the man who had judged me so harshly just yesterday. All those times you talked about following protocol, I spat, advancing toward him. Was that code for selling out your students? Security agents stepped between us, but the satisfaction of seeing his smug facade crumble was worth it. Agent Markham placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Your actions, however unconventional, protected Sarah when our own systems failed. For that, we owe you everything. He pulled out a thick envelope. This is relocation funds for both of you. New identities, new lives. Whatever you need. I looked at Sarah, then back at the envelope. No, I said firmly. I won't run. Not again. The room fell silent as I straightened my posture. If you want to protect Sarah, you'll need someone who understands what it means to fight for what's right. Someone who knows how to navigate these halls and keep her safe. I turned to Sarah. What do you say, partner? Ready to show these suits what real courage looks like. For the first time since I'd met her, Sarah smiled, a genuine, radiant expression that chased away the shadows in her eyes. Let's do it, she said, extending her hand. As our fingers touched, I felt something awaken within me, a fire that had been smoldering since my suspension, now roaring to life with purpose. Agent Markham studied us for a long moment before nodding. Very well, but understand this. The people we're dealing with don't play fair. They'll stop at nothing to silence Elena Vasquez and anyone associated with her. Are you prepared for that? I squeezed Sarah's hand tighter. Bring it on. The weeks that followed transformed Lincoln High into something unrecognizable. Armed guards patrolled the halls, their presence a constant reminder of the danger lurking just beyond our walls. Yet amidst this militarized environment, something remarkable began to unfold, a revolution of conscience that would change us all forever. Principal Meyer's betrayal had shaken the foundation of trust within our school community. Teachers who once prided themselves on maintaining professional distance found themselves questioning everything they believed about their roles. Mrs. Peterson, the same math teacher who had crossed the hallway to avoid me during my suspension, became one of my strongest allies. I always thought following the rules meant protecting our students, she confessed one evening as we reviewed security protocols. But sometimes, protection means breaking those rules. Our makeshift war room in the old drama storage closet became a sanctuary of sorts. Here, between stacks of dusty props and forgotten costumes, we plotted our resistance. Sarah proved invaluable, her intimate knowledge of cybersecurity techniques inherited from her mother, helping us stay one step ahead of our enemies. Each night, as we worked through complex encryption algorithms and counter-surveillance strategies, I watched her transform from a frightened child into a confident young warrior. The turning point came during what we later called the Thanksgiving incident. Agents monitoring our communications intercepted a message suggesting Sarah's mother was alive and hiding in Canada. The directive came down from Washington, immediate extraction, no matter the cost. But we knew better. It was a trap designed to flush Elena Vasquez out of hiding. When Agent Markham ordered us to comply, something inside me snapped. No, I declared, slamming my fist on the conference table. We're done being pawns in your game. If you want to use Sarah as bait, you'll have to go through me first. To my surprise, every teacher in the room stood with me. Even Mr. Harris, the janitor who had once avoided my gaze, stepped forward, brandishing his mop like a weapon. "These are our kids," he growled. "You want to hurt them? You deal with us." The standoff lasted 36 hours. Parents joined the protest, forming human chains around the school perimeter. Local businesses shut down in solidarity. News crews captured every moment, broadcasting our defiance to the world. It was chaos, beautiful and terrifying all at once. At the height of the confrontation, Sarah emerged from the crowd, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "We're not afraid of you anymore," she shouted, addressing the assembled agents. "You want to find my mother? Fine, but you'll do it our way, with transparency, with integrity, or not at all." The power in her words sent ripples through the crowd, igniting a firestorm of support that spread far beyond Lincoln City. In that moment, I understood the true nature of courage. It wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. It was about choosing, every single day, to stand for something greater than yourself. About recognizing that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same. As I watched our ragtag army of teachers, students, and parents unite against impossible odds, I realized we weren't just fighting for Sarah or her mother anymore. We were fighting for every child who had ever been failed by a system more concerned with protocol than people. When Agent Markham finally relented, agreeing to our terms for finding Elena Vasquez, it wasn't just a victory for our cause. It was validation of everything I had believed in since that fateful day I bought Sarah those shoes. Sometimes, doing the right thing means breaking the rules. Sometimes, it means standing alone against overwhelming opposition. And sometimes, it means inspiring others to join you in creating a better world. The final showdown took place in the most unexpected of locations, the abandoned theater downtown, its marquee still flickering with ghostly lights from shows long past. We had chosen it specifically for its symbolic significance, a place where stories came to life, where truths were revealed beneath the spotlight. As I stood backstage with Sarah, listening to the hum of generators powering our hastily assembled broadcast equipment, I felt the weight of history pressing down upon us. Elena Vasquez emerged from the shadows like a specter of justice, her presence commanding immediate silence from the assembled crowd. The woman who had evaded capture for months, whose revelations threatened to dismantle a corrupt empire, looked remarkably ordinary. Yet when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had stared into the abyss and returned stronger. "They will tell you I'm a criminal," she began, her words broadcast live to millions via our secure network. "That I've endangered national security. But I ask you, what is more dangerous? Exposing corruption or allowing it to fester unchecked?" Behind her, screens displayed documents, emails, financial records, irrefutable evidence of a conspiracy spanning decades, implicating politicians, corporate executives, and intelligence operatives. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Hashtags demanding accountability trended worldwide within minutes. News anchors abandoned their scripts to cover the unfolding drama. Most significantly, whistleblowers began stepping forward, their testimonies corroborating Elena's evidence. In that single moment, the carefully constructed facade of institutional integrity began to crumble. But the true measure of our success wasn't in the headlines or social media metrics. It was in the faces of those who had gathered to witness history. Teachers clutching each other's hands, students filming the event on their phones, parents holding their children close. People who had once felt powerless against systemic injustice now saw what collective courage could achieve. As the press conference concluded, Agent Markham approached me, his expression unreadable. "You've changed everything," he said simply. "For better or worse, the world will never be the same." His words carried both warning and respect, acknowledgement of the seismic shift we had triggered. In the weeks that followed, the changes rippled outward like waves from a stone cast into still water. School districts nationwide began implementing whistleblower protection programs for educators. Parent-teacher organizations evolved into watchdog groups, empowered to challenge administrative decisions that compromise student welfare. Most profoundly, A new generation of students learned that authority figures weren't infallible, that sometimes the greatest acts of leadership came from those willing to question power rather than serve it blindly. Sarah and I watched these transformations unfold from our new positions. She is a student representative on the school board, me as Lincoln High's official advocate for student rights. Our roles had changed, but our mission remained the same: to ensure that no child would ever have to choose between dignity and survival again. Yet perhaps the most significant change occurred within myself. The woman who had once feared losing her job discovered something far more valuable: her voice. Standing in that theater, watching truth illuminate darkness, I understood that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. And that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could spark revolutions that change the world. Looking back on those tumultuous months, I realize how profoundly that single act of buying shoes transformed not just my life, but the lives of everyone involved. Sarah graduated valedictorian this spring, her speech bringing the entire auditorium to its feet. Gone was the frightened girl in soaked socks. In her place stood a confident young woman destined to follow in her mother's footsteps as a champion for truth and justice. Elena Vasquez now leads a global initiative combating corporate corruption, her work recognized with numerous humanitarian awards. As for Lincoln High, the transformation has been nothing short of miraculous. Our war room has become the center for ethical leadership, training educators nationwide in balancing protocol with compassion. Mrs. Peterson spearheads a program identifying and supporting at-risk students, while Mr. Harris serves as our unofficial guardian angel, his mop now accompanied by a walkie-talkie connecting him to campus security. The scars remain, of course. Some nights, I still wake to the sound of helicopter blades, my heart racing with memories of that fateful morning. But these echoes of the past serve as reminders of how far we've come. The school board implemented comprehensive whistleblower protections, ensuring no teacher would ever face termination for acting in a student's best interest. Our story became a case study in educational institutions worldwide, proof that compassion and courage can coexist with professional responsibility. Most significantly, I've learned that true strength lies not in adhering to rules, but in having the wisdom to know when to bend them. The hundreds of letters I've received from educators facing similar dilemmas testify to the ripple effect of standing firm in one's convictions. Each note reinforces my belief that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply choosing to care when the system says you shouldn't. Now, as I prepare for my role as principal at Lincoln High, a position offered not despite my rebellion, but because of it, I carry these lessons forward. The framed photo on my desk shows Sarah and me on graduation day, her diploma clutched proudly in one hand, her other resting on my shoulder. Beneath it, scrawled in her familiar handwriting, "To the teacher who taught me that kindness is never against the rules." The helicopters may have brought chaos to our skies that November morning, but they also delivered something far more enduring: the understanding that sometimes salvation arrives not through grand gestures, but through simple acts of humanity. And that true courage isn't about knowing you're right. It's about doing what's right, even when everyone tells you you're wrong.